Welcome back. Happy Friday. My name is Yagobi, and I am the host for this channel and the show. Welcome back. It's the start of the weekend, right? Hopefully you guys are having a blessed and great start to your weekend. This Friday, kind of lovely morning. It's kind of gloomy out here in the DFW area, but it's kind of gloomy in Bitcoin world as well, right? We're seeing Bitcoin not be able to hold on to the $70,000 mark. It lost 68,000 and now it's lost 66,000. What is going on? We talked about how, on the daily time frame that it looked like it was about to go into sell pressure session, and it did, right? So we kind of saw this coming. It was just hesitant going back and forth, but the big story is $14 billion worth of options expired today, and the max paying price point was 75,000. So as we were getting closer to the Friday expiry date and time, we should have known, we're probably going to go into a big dump. And longs, or in the options world, they're called calls. They got annihilated, right? And longs in the leverage world got annihilated as well. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to dive into that. We're going to do our Iran war conflict update like we do every single morning, because oil affects Bitcoin and geopolitical and macro events affect Bitcoin as well. But I do want to welcome back TikTok, Abstract, Zora, Rumble, Twitch, and of course YouTube and X. And I'm going to tell you guys, on the YouTube side, you guys are awesome. Everyone's awesome on all the platforms, but on the YouTube side, keep hitting those likes, guys. We're getting more views, more impressions. It's working. So keep up the good work. I appreciate you guys helping me. That's the way that you guys can support me, right? Going live every single day. But I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. We're going to hit on some other topics as well. We're going to get into Mara mining company. They sold $1.1 billion worth of Bitcoin. And they're putting that money into AI mining efforts, right? So is that a scary move? I don't think so. We're in the bear market. We'll get deeper into that. Also, we'll hit on predictions markets, just really forming a really strong part of the Web3 industry. In fact, it's starting to go beyond that. Institutions are pouring in terms of investment. So what do we look for? Does Kalshi go public? Do we try to get exposure through Kalshi? Does Polymarket launch a token in the future? Or maybe they, what happens with that, right? A lot of that volume is coming on chain through Polymarket. So we'll get into that as well. Some clarity information coming from Senator Tim Scott. We'll dive into that as well. And then some fun Bitcoin ecosystem stuff as well. There was a funny March Madness theme of who's the strongest MaxiMadness is what it's called. And surprisingly, the final two are directly from the Bitcoin ecosystem, the Ordinals ecosystem. The creator of Ordinals, Casey, and his assistant, or I guess, I don't know what they are, coworker Aaron, are in the finals here. So really cool to see that Ordinals is representing there. And then also in Arun's update is coming. So we'll dive into that. And then a new Ordinals marketplace. So should be fun to kind of wrap up the show. But put your questions and comments into the chat. I do see Glasshopper says it's Friday. It is Friday, guys. It is Friday. And so even though Bitcoin's price action isn't great, we still at least get the start of the weekend. So if you work that 9 to 5 grind, then at least you get a break, right? And hopefully we can kick that off and have some fun with this morning live stream to break in the weekend. But let's start things off by you guys smashing that like on YouTube and subscribing to the channel if you like my style and content, and on X, share the space. Let's get it going, guys. Let's get it going. Appreciate all the support with that. But let's dive into the Iran war update. What is happening on this Friday morning? All right, it's been extremely volatile with Bitcoin and oil, actually, just back and forth. But CBS News is providing us with updates, and the last update came at a little before 2 a.m. Eastern, so 1:57, and it says Trump extends pause on striking Iranian energy plants. Witkoff floats 15-point peace proposal. I don't know what to believe anymore, right? Yesterday, Trump came out with a press conference talking about they received they're going to receive 8 oil cruise ships or boats filled with oil, and then saying that one's already, it was a gift from the Iranian leadership. And then later in the day, we hear about a Thai oil ship coming out of the Strait of Hormuz getting strikes set on it, right? So catching on fire, being basically destroyed. So I just don't know really what to believe. It goes in and says President Trump has extended a pause on striking Iranian energy infrastructure until April 6th, saying talks with Iran are going very well. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said at a cabinet meeting that the U.S. had presented Iran with a 15-point peace proposal. Mr. Trump said he's not desperate to make a deal. And then oil prices were back up and stock market fell as Mr. Trump issued a stern new warning for Iran's leaders to agree to a deal to end the war on his terms before it's too late. Mr. Trump teased. It's weird that they're calling him Mr. Trump and not the president. This is CBS, which is an American company. That's weird. Anyways, it says Mr. Trump teased in the cabinet meeting that taking Iran's oil is an option, but added, I wouldn't talk about it. It's pretty funny. Yeah, that's a funny comment there. Iran continues to attack Persian Gulf states and Israel and still has the Strait of Hormuz in a chokehold. But Israel's defense chief said the Iranian naval commander responsible for that blockade was killed in a targeted airstrike. So they are continually, targeting Iran, the Iranian leadership, right? Trying to really get all the leadership out. So they're going to be at a point of desperation. But it doesn't seem like every time they do something and remove a leader, they don't seem to get closer to desperation. But I don't know. We don't know exactly what these talks entail, right? We just hear from what the media is saying. And then finally, this last paragraph here says, the Israel's military said its forces carried out a wide-scale wave of strikes targeting infrastructure of the Iranian terror regime in the heart of Tehran early Friday. This as Iran's Revolutionary Guards said Friday that they carried out missile and drone strikes the previous day targeting sites in Israel and military facilities in the Gulf used by U.S. forces. A maintenance facility for a U.S. Patriot air defense system was targeted in Bahrain. The Guard said in a statement carried by Iranian news agencies. Lebanese media reported an Israeli strike hit Beirut's southern suburbs early Friday. Agence France press correspondents heard several explosions from Hezbollah stronghold that Israel has repeatedly struck since war erupted. And the Saudi Defense Ministry said it had intercepted and destroyed 4 drones over the kingdom's east early Friday. So they're continually going after the Gulf states surrounding Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, continually trying to put that wedge in between them. That doesn't seem to be really working. The Gulf states are not happy, but they're still, communicating with the U.S., participating and helping them, right? So we'll see what happens. And like I said, it directly affects oil, right? Whenever this stuff starts to happen. But let's check really quick to see if there is any major economic events for today. U.S. employment report. No, that's for April next week. For today, consumer sentiment. We're still waiting on that to come in, but the forecast is 54. And the previous was 55.5. But outside of that, no other significant events. There's a regional Fed speaking in Philadelphia and Richmond regional Fed as well. So nothing big on that side. Let's check out the markets to see how the markets are responding to today and what's happening with the options and everything for crypto, but also the geopolitical macro for the stock market and the precious metals. We'll start with the S&P. The S&P is pulled back 0.8% 8% here. The NASDAQ is pulled back 0.8%. as well. The VIX is up 7.36%. You got the DXY up 0.09%. The Russell 2000 pulling back 1.52%. The Mag 7 pulling back 1.76%. NVIDIA pulling back 1.42%. Google pulling back 0.8% here. Let me pull down this. Apple is pulling back, and then Netflix is up. The only stock that is in that major group there is up 0.23%. Crypto, Bitcoin getting gut punched. It's back over 66,000 at least, but it's down 3.77%. You got Ethereum pulling back 3.32%. Precious metals rebounding finally, right? You see gold up almost 3%, which is significant, largest market cap of any asset in the world. And so, a couple percentage points is very significant for gold, but it's back above 4,500. But you got to remember, it's been getting beat down. Silver is up 4%, back to $70. So I guess that's a good sign for the precious gold group there. It's back above $70. It was below, it was at 68, I believe, yesterday. And then you see oil. Oil is jumping up pretty significantly. It's up 4.42%. So yeah, not great. But let's continue on into the main topic, which is $14 billion of BTC options expired. And the max pain point in terms of price point was $75,000, right? So if $75,000 hit, then a lot of these platforms would have, lost, right? And a lot of these, there wasn't a ton of puts, and we'll actually take a look at that specifically and have a chart. There was definitely a lot more call options. So think of calls for the crypto natives as longs and puts as shorts. And it was pretty significantly lopsided for more calls, so longs to the upside, than shorts. So as we came upon Friday morning and we saw that the price was most likely not going to get there, we should have realized, hey, it's about to go into a strong sell pressure session. And so that's what happened, right? And so a lot of people lost money that were in that leveraged long call type position. And, $300 million as well of longs got liquidated. So outside of options, just whoever was betting Bitcoin to the upside, big loss there. So what does a bounce look like for Bitcoin? First of all, I don't think there's a probable chance that Bitcoin bounces in the short term. Maybe some sort of manipulation headline can very quickly bounce it, but not. I don't even see that. We're pretty strong heading into the sell pressure session. But what would it look like? It would have to be, very significant headline saying that, hey, look, we've come to a peace deal. ETF flows would have to reverse. There would have to be just a lot of sentiment change, and I just don't see that happening. Breakdown scenario is more likely. And so how does that play out if there's a breakdown scenario? Well, first of all, it's already kind of broken down, right? But the next level is that $65,000 support level that we were talking about yesterday. And if it loses that, which I think there's a significant, pretty good chance that that's a probable situation. But what needs to happen, right? The ETF outflows need to continue. Right now, ETF outflows was, last week, the week before, pretty consistent to, for Bitcoin at least, inflows. We saw that. And then the last couple days, we've had some outflows, right? More specifically Ethereum, but Bitcoin actually started to catch up and started to have some outflows. And so if that continues, and then we see the momentum indicators are pointing to the downside, we lose 65,000. The geopolitical situation doesn't seem to be getting, but everything's pointing towards more downside, more bleed out, more sell pressure. So let's take a quick look here at Bitcoin on this daily chart. And you can see we drew this out here where there was an uptrend that was forming on the daily chart. Well, that broke yesterday, right? So we lost that. We were having higher highs, higher lows, and it broke trend, no higher high here. So now we are finally kind of playing into this on a daily chart. where the momentum indicator kind of gives you a clear picture. And you see we have started a pretty strong sell pressure session here. So, I mean, it looks like we're going to be down here for a good minute. But how long do you think we're going to be down here? That's the question, right? And if you pull up the weekly chart, you zoom out a little bit more. We've been playing with this situation on the weekly chart, being in the sell pressure session for a long, long time. So, like I always say, what goes up must come down. What goes down must eventually come up. So on the weekly chart, this has to eventually come out, but every candle's a week, right? So that could take a month. That could take however long, this bear market wants to take for us to come out of this, right? So, just because right now we're going to be in the sell pressure session on the daily time frame doesn't mean it's doom and gloom for the next 3 months type situation, right? We're just going to go through a normal, probably a sell pressure session. Maybe it gets a bit intense. We challenge that $60,000 mark again eventually. But if you look at this last session that we just got out of, the buy pressure, it lasted from February 15th all the way until March 21st. So about a month. That could be something that we're about to go into for the sell pressure, right? So just keep that in mind. But that is the scenarios, right? Bounce back, very unlikely in my opinion. Maybe they try to manipulate the headlines for a short term, but we're going into a sell pressure session on the daily. It's more, how long does this last? That's my opinion, not financial advice, but that is where I'm at, guys. With the options expiring today, everything's pointing more towards the downside for Bitcoin and Ethereum and the crypto space. That's okay. We get these assets cheaper, and if you believe in the space, that's good, right? We get them at a discount, right? Especially Bitcoin and Ethereum. All right, let's take a look at some news headlines here and see what is happening across the space. Well, I do want to share this option so you guys can kind of see how lopsided it was. This is a chart from Deribit reporting. Deribit is the largest options platform in crypto, Bitcoin, Web3, right? And you can see the open interest for calls, which is longs to the upside, was 120,000 positions, right? And then the puts, so the shorts, basically 66,000. So almost double the interest there. So everybody was bullish. And that's probably why everybody got wrecked, honestly. All right, let's get to the first headline, and it's not necessarily a good one from a macro perspective, but we need to be alert and updated for what's happening, right? So the U.S. 30-year Treasury yield climbs to 4.972%, approaching 5%, pretty much 5%, right? 10-year yield hits 4.458% as bond sell-off deepens. What does this mean? This means that, the group that is in charge of setting these Treasury yields returns realizes that they need to make these assets more attractive, right? Now, we did talk a little bit about I think it was maybe earlier this week, about how some countries are starting to, buy into these assets. I think that's true, but they still, need to continually make them attractive, right? I mean, there's a sell-off that is happening, but that can also be at the same time, right? Like, what other countries are kind of pouring in, some other countries getting out, or entities getting out. But they're going to continually prop these yields up to make them more attractive. That means that, they want more interest, right? So what does that mean for the macro? We'll see. I think, long term, I think it's bullish for Bitcoin. Short term, maybe not so much, right? But something to keep on our radar. Does this continually jump up? All right, and then the ETF FLOWS report for yesterday showed Bitcoin with a significant outflow. Bitcoin had an outflow of 171.22 million. And as we talk on this live stream show, we talk about how Bitcoin is really, or not Bitcoin, the ETF FLOWS in general guide us and let us know kind of where these prices are heading, right? Where's the trend heading? Is it heading up? Is it heading down? Well, we're starting to see pretty significant outflows here. So Bitcoin came in with an outflow of 171 million. Ethereum continued its outflow at 92.54 million. So that's pretty significant because they've been, with an outflow. I think this might be the fifth day in a row. Solana outflow 1.04 million. So not too much there. And then XRP flat, right? So no real movement for the XRP ETF there. But, this is something to continually pay attention to, because if this starts to get heavy, then we can probably anticipate challenging below 65,000, heading towards the $60,000 mark, which is right at that border of the 200 moving average on the weekly chart. All right. We just hit on the ETFs, but Bitcoin's ETF, so that 172 million of outflow, that was the largest outflow in 3 weeks, right? I was telling you guys that we've had a consistent inflow for Bitcoin, but yesterday was the largest in 3 weeks. So is that a sign? Probably, especially whenever, these momentum indicators are pointing that we're going to be selling down further. So, all right. Let's get into what happened yesterday. And $258 million were liquidated across crypto markets in 4 hours, right? So this is constantly a moving target because, it gets updated, right? But in a 4-hour span, that's a significant amount of liquidations that are happening, right? Let me actually pull up the current chart of liquidations and see what is happening recently. Let's see if it's getting better a little bit here. And you see the 4-hour, it did get better and went from 258, which was reported, quite a while ago, hours ago, right? Now you're seeing the recent 4-hour window go from 258 to 92. So people are calming down with leverage, but the longs are, continually piling up here. I mean, you got $80.35 million in longs liquidated here, and then the shorts are 11.69. Within the hour, longs, people are still pouring in the longs. $17.11 million in longs liquidated, so that just changed to 13. So they are calming down a little bit, and then now shorts is starting to pick up right at 7. So be careful if you're playing with leverage, especially in this market. I mean, this market is absolutely nuts for people to be playing anything more. And this is my personal take. Anything more than, I think 5x is risky in this current market. So you're talking about maybe, being conservative, a 3x, I think. And that's the problem with the mentality of using leverage is when you win in leverage, your confidence jumps quickly, right? So you say, well, 10x is not that much. I see people doing 20x and 30. Yeah, those people doing 20x and 30x get liquidated on short movements, right? Just because, 10x, you might get away with hitting some big homers here and there. Settle for the singles, the doubles, the 3x's. That's not financial advice. I think that's just more large, especially this market, like I just mentioned. Really risky out there. What is up, Joko for crypto? And I do see you, Gatu Tafer. I think that's your username over on the abstract side. GM, good morning. Drop some tickers if you want me to check out any specific tickers for you guys. It's Friday. It's Fun Friday. We're going to have fun today, heading into the weekend. Who cares about the price, except for just pay attention, but who cares about the short movement of Bitcoin? If you've been watching this show consistently, then you're a believer in Bitcoin most likely. And when you zoom out, it goes up. But we like to talk about price just because we want to see these kind of movements, but also how movements within the Web3 and areas that affect our space create different price movements. As of right now, it's really just headline driven based off of geopolitical kind of dumb stuff. But you just zoom out and say, okay, I know where I'm at. Okay, so cool. Let's continue on here. By the way, I just showed the liquidation map, and it's directly on coinglass.com. All you got to do is click liquidation, and that's how you can find that. And it's very helpful, right? And we're going to get to the liquidation levels for Bitcoin once we get into the price action, which is actually right now. Let's get into the price action and see where Bitcoin potentially will head for these short-term movements. Yesterday I said, I feel like sideways with some downtrend. I said maybe 68, grab that liquidity. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. They grabbed the liquidity. They continued on though. So, it went to 66. We basically lost the complete momentum switch to sell pressure. So let's take a look at Bitcoin, Ethereum on these lower time frames, and then we'll get into the alt markets. Like I said, drop a ticker if you want me to check out any token, really preferably ranked in the top 500. That's preferably. But if there's something new and you want me to look on Deck Screener, I'll take a look at that as well. But I'm going to remind you guys, smash the likes on YouTube. It is helping so much. I appreciate you guys. YouTube, smash the likes. They're pushing out impressions. It's amazing what you guys have been doing, helping me out. Continually smash those likes. And then X too, smash the likes on X if you're on that side as well. All the platforms, if you don't mind. All right, let's take a look here at Bitcoin on this hour chart. Let's see what is happening with the shorter term movements. Let's see if anything, we can get a feel here. Yeah, so going back to Wednesday, 10 a.m., this sell pressure session was just extended out. There was a kind of this fake, very weak buy pressure session that lasted from late yesterday evening, 6 p.m. to about 2 a.m. Didn't really get anywhere with it. We went from 60, well, I guess we wicked down here from 66.3 and wicked actually up to 60. Oh, that's not much. 66.8. So yeah, not much movement to the upside at all. And it just came back to the downside, right? So we are starting to see a little bit of a breakdown here though. If it does go back to the upside, I'm probably not expecting too much. But look, I mean, if this new range is trying to settle and say, okay, we're maybe to the downside challenging 65,000. That's that new support level, right? Then I could see ranging between 65 and 68, right? Back and forth. So that is something that's possible, right? Especially whenever they're trying to grab these liquidation pockets that we're going to get into. But it is starting to break down a little bit here. We just got to oversold not long ago, though. So that's the thing that's making me say, oh, I think we'll probably hang down here for a minute, right? For a bit. And we just got to oversold here at 4 a.m. Central this morning. So probably hang down here for a bit, right? If we do range, like I said, maybe sideways with a little bit of bounce back, 67, 68 might be on the table, but then coming right back down, right? So they're finding a new level here, new range is what it is. They don't make it easy for you guys or me sometimes if I'm playing leverage, which I haven't been, but yeah, so they're going to sniff out these liquidation levels, right? So for today, maybe a little bit of bounce back, like I said, sideways with a little bit of uptrend, 67, 68, and then probably in the day, like most Fridays, right? Which is not much, then liquidity, and probably a little bit more to the downside to end the day. That's probably, how it'll play out today. But if we are looking at where they're going to try to get you guys or whoever's playing, who's crazy enough to play higher leverage in this market, you can look right here on coinglass.com. And I like to use Model 2, but I go to liquidation, let it hover and click on Model 2 because I feel like it's the clearest liquidation map. And you can see right below where kind of below where we are, there is a decent amount of liquidation, patch area there. It starts at 66,097. So we're sitting at what price right now? 66,244. Close enough to that area, in my opinion, to start grabbing this liquidity. 19.5 million at 6607, and it goes all the way, and then it goes to 21.56 at 65,966, and then kind of starts to taper off here once it gets to 65.7, right? And then below that, it's not really too much that's built up. It's really starting from 66,097 bucks to that 65,700. Decent amount of liquidity there. Above, you don't really see much. 68,316. There's 14.93 million, and then nothing above that until you get to 69,230, which is getting crazy up there, right? So the shorts are really starting to pile in, it looks like, because once you get to that 69,360, it's 24 million, 26 million, 24 million again. So good cluster forming right at that 69.3 to 70,000. And so they will play games, but maybe wait till that builds up even more, because whenever they do liquidate, it hurts, right? So, and like I said, they don't make it easy for us, right? They do not want to do that, but you're starting to see a little bit of some green candle build up here on the hour. But anyways, that is what I'm looking at here for Bitcoin on the hour chart. Let's take a quick look at the floor. The floor looks like it wants to continually sell down. I mean, it is pretty strong here. It's been going for a minute, like a good, decent, amount of time. But again, we haven't been in oversold here for very long, right? So whatever happens to the upside today, if Bitcoin does go to the upside, I think maybe it's going to be a liquidation grab and then, back to the downside. I mean, this doesn't look great. This looks pretty bad for the 4-hour chart, right? The 4-hour will give you a forecast of 2 to 3 days, by the way. Let's see. PeersNet says, great show with Big Noodle yesterday. Interesting that they chose N8N rather than OpenClaw. Yeah, that was awesome, for them to break that down. Dr. Mian is really awesome. So Superfly, right? They're both really good at what they do, educated. And, I do think that they chose N8N because it's more structured. OpenClaw can feel very much like you have a very, like a talented assistant that they're talented, but they also kind of go rogue a little bit, not like against your wishes necessarily, but like will not do the task exactly necessarily like you ask them to. They drift a little bit, right? With N8N, it's like very workflow style, right? So, and for the audience, what are you guys talking about? Every Wednesday we have the team from Big Noodle, which is a project within the Bitcoin ecosystem that's heavily focused on AI. The product is an AI product, and they educate us all, right, on Wednesdays for a 30 to 45 minute time segment. And this last episode was about workflow and plugging in and creating an agent essentially with N8N, which is more of like what the automation tools used to be, but they've been integrating AI for quite a long time. And think of Zapier, N8N. Those are the similar type of products that enterprise companies have used for probably the last 10, 20 years. But they also have updated their systems with AI, so you can create your own agent in a sense by plugging in OpenAI and stuff like that. So go watch the episode. I don't know why I'm telling you guys about it, but it's on my the YouTube channel, OnChain Revolution YouTube channel. If you go back to Wednesday's episode, so 2 days ago, you can go, and I have it timestamped so you can see exactly where to start. But appreciate the comment there, PeersNet. All right, let's get back to this. So 4-hour chart looking like it wants to sell down further. If any upside today, my personal opinion is it's going to be just to grab liquidity, more of a distraction. Look at this daily. Ugh. Oh my gosh. This daily chart for Bitcoin screams we're going to sell down more. I mean, look at this. At this point, I was like, okay, are we going to get a fake out for Bitcoin, to the downside and just go back into this happened and then this happened. So, I'm expecting a continuation of this. Plus, look at this. We haven't even really gotten into oversold territory on the daily chart. So, yeah. Short-term distractions, if you're good enough to be able to scalp like that, then you are solid. You are a good trader if you can scalp this market. I mean, sure, like you can, if you're disciplined enough to be able to get in and out within like an hour and a half type of time span, hey, more power to you. All right, so that's Bitcoin for the rest of today and heading into the weekend. And that's the thing too. So, that 4-hour chart's saying more sell down. Well, Friday, second half Fridays, thin liquidity, Saturdays, thin liquidity typically. And then Sunday, things pick back up. So we'll see what happens on Sunday. ETH is going to be very much, similar. It looks like it's trying to come out of sell pressure though here. A little bit more aggressive than Bitcoin. This is interesting to see, especially with Ethereum having the ETF outflows the past 4 days. This is very interesting to see what's happening here. I bet you the 4-hour chart doesn't really show too much here, but Ethereum had a lot of options expiring today, and there's a lot of longs probably piling up after the assets got obliterated yesterday, right, and this morning. And so we'll see what's happening. But as of right now, it looks like it wants to come out of the sub pressure session for Ethereum. Very, very interesting read here on the hour chart. Let's see what the 4 hours is. So 4 hours not as aggressive to the downside as Bitcoin. I almost wonder if we're going to see ETH kind of do a little bit of its own dance here, because it's typically been following Bitcoin pretty much like to a T. So we'll see. This is something to pay attention to. Let's see if I can pull up. Maybe Bitcoin. Where's the ticker here? See if there. I'm sorry, if I can pull up ETH. Yeah, it's not. These aren't ETH there. So I mean, there has to be a ticker in here that I can change. Anyways, I will look for that because I do want to see if there's any big patches of liquidations there. But all right, the 4 hour chart, it still does point to further down, but not as aggressive as Bitcoin. Something to continually pay attention to for sure. And then the daily is not looking good, right? So it's more of that hour chart that's a little bit got me scratching my head, but that's a short term, low time frame. So you can't put too much into that, right? So that is what I got for Bitcoin, Ethereum for the rest of today. Heading into the weekend, let's take a quick look at the alts, the crypto bubbles here, looking nasty. If you're in Siren to me is starting to be that new Pippin token. Is there crime syndicate organizations that are washing their cash through Siren like they were Pippin? I don't know, but Siren is down 53.6% on the day, and it was up the past 2 weeks. So it getting kind of obliterated or pulled back significantly is not too much of a shock because, like I said, it was like the big winner for the past couple weeks. But it's down today. It's the biggest loser on the board today. Siren's pulling back at 53.6%. It is a token on the BNB chain, right? Let's see what else is sticking out. Morpho is pulling back. Morpho's been a strong, DeFi project, but I almost wonder if institutions and retail whales are hesitant with Morpho and Aave because of what seems to be this agreement that the centralized exchanges and the leaders in crypto and the banks are coming to, and that is no yield generation for distributors, only stablecoin issuers. That would hurt Morpho, right? But we also don't know what small fine print's going to be in that. Maybe there's going to be some certain agreements. Maybe these tokens or these projects will find a workaround. You're starting to see some projects become really friendly with institutions, and I think that's intentional, right? You're seeing Layer 0, you're seeing Chainlink, which those are more services, but they're just like really trying to work hard, like very closely with institutions. Probably because they know that there's going to be a lot of regulation that's going to be influenced by them. But anyways, Morpho's down 7%. You got Kite pulling back 8.2%. ETH5 pulling back 10.1%. You also got what else here? Polkadot pulling back 2.6%. Master Suhel says, "Are you from UK?" No, I'm not from the UK. I wonder why you asked that. Do I have a UK accent? I don't think so. Master Suhil from the abstract community is asking if I'm from the UK. That's interesting. Solana pulling back 4%. What else is on this board here? Near Protocol 2.4. Majority of everything is pulling back between 3%, 7% here in the top 100. So that is what we got there, guys. And then in the top 100 through 200, we got a winner here. ICNT up 18.4%. XCN up 3.8%. Quebec up, or Cubic up 4.6%. The biggest loser is River. River is a platform where you can DCA Bitcoin. And they're down right now about 25%, right? Hex is down 8.3%. Pulse is down 11.1%. And then kind of similar situation here across the board, 4 to 8% pulling back for the top 200. So that is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the alt market. Keep those comments and questions coming in. Make sure on the YouTube side or every platform, but YouTube, if you're on YouTube watching, commenting, smash the like. It helps me so much. please do that because it helps. And then do all the other platforms as well. But let's take a look at some other headlines here. We're going to get to the Bitcoin ecosystem stuff because it's going to be very, very interesting and fun to talk about. But let's talk about some positive stuff because we've been hitting on, how Bitcoin and liquidations, this and all this stuff. But Bitcoin has outperformed the S&P, gold, and oil. Wait for it. In nearly every major geopolitical crisis over the past 6 years, per CryptoRank. So we've known throughout this recent, geopolitical conflict that Bitcoin has outperformed all the assets. But did we know over the past 6 years it has? I think most of us that follow Bitcoin. But here's a chart that goes over the performance here, and you can see Bitcoin, US-Iran escalation that is from 2020, not this one. We've had escalations with them multiple times, but Bitcoin had a plus 20%. S&P pulled back 7%. Gold pushed up 6%, and oil pushed up 13%. So oil is always going to be a winner with Iran whenever we have a conflict there. Then you go to the COVID outbreak. Bitcoin pushed up 21%. S&P pushed up 2%. Gold pushed up 3%. Oil got crushed, pulled back 54%. Then the U.S. regional banking crisis, March 9th, 2023. So that was when we were coming out of the bear market, if you guys remember. That's whenever Ordinals and Bitcoin's ecosystem started to really pick up and start to catch fire. But Bitcoin jumped up 32%, S&P jumped up 4%, gold 11%, oil pulled back 12%. The yen carry trade unwinding. This was 2024. Bitcoin. So this was one of the rare instances that Bitcoin didn't win. It's up 3%. S&P up 7%, gold up 9%, and then oil up 2%. Trump's Liberation Day, which was April 2nd, 2025. Not liberation for crypto, I feel like, but Bitcoin did hit 126,000 that year. That was one of the big winners. But Bitcoin was up 24%, S&P up 4%, gold up 8%, and oil up 4%. Iran conflict right now, the current situation. Bitcoin up 12%. This is, I think opened a lot of people's eyes that maybe didn't realize how strong Bitcoin is whenever there's issues and turmoil and stuff. But Bitcoin's up 12% throughout this conflict. S&P pulling back 4%. Gold getting crushed right now, down 16%. So this is something to pay attention to. If you look at all of the other kind of, dates that there was a lot of, turmoil, geopolitical macro stuff. I mean, gold was green in every single one except for this. And it's pulled back 16%. That has to be a significant outlier, right? I mean, every other one, it was in the green, and now it's down 16%, while Bitcoin's performing pretty well, right? Up 12%. And then you see oil up 9%. Again, Middle East, Iran situation, so no surprise there. So I think that's, pretty significant there that gold, there's maybe a little bit of a transition in perception for gold versus Bitcoin. Maybe their relationship is changing a little bit. But we need more data to be able to confirm that, right? Probably another instance of a situation to where we see gold fall back while Bitcoin pulls up. All right, let's see what else we got here. Probably go a little bit longer today because there's quite a bit of headlines here, but this is positive, even though it might sound not so positive at first, but you got to take your time and read. And sometimes I got to slow myself down, right? But huge from Cointelegraph, newly created wallet withdraws 2,950 Bitcoin worth $200 million from Binance in single transaction per Lookonchain. So Lookonchain is reporting this via Arkham data. So you're like, oh, well, I mean, that doesn't sound great, but it's actually is good because whenever an individual is pulling Bitcoin off of an exchange like Binance, what are they going to do with it, right? They're going to put it into self-custody into cold storage, probably multi, MPC or multi-sigs, just because that's a lot of money, $200 million, right? But, people, these are large whales or institutions that are saying, okay, I want to take this off of the exchange, and these are cheap prices. That's why, I bought this, or whatever they did, however they acquired it, right, at the time. This is bullish because, that's the significant amount that's being taken off of the exchange and not being sold into stablecoin. That's where the main point is with this. All right. Next headline here: Mara sells 1.1 billion in Bitcoin. So we went from kind of bullish to this kind of doesn't sound so bullish, right? Mara sells 1.1 billion in Bitcoin, leans into AI infrastructure. An article by Simply Wall Street comes out. This was yesterday, right? So pretty significant headline. But here are some of the bullet points. Mara Holdings. So Mara, for you guys that don't know what Mara is, it's a large Bitcoin mining company. So when people hear that Bitcoin mining companies are selling their Bitcoin down, they instantly start to freak out. And I get it, but you have to remember that they are also businesses, especially the larger ones, and the small and medium-sized ones. Really, a lot of them got phased out because they couldn't afford the energy costs versus like the competition was just so significant in the larger entities. But even the larger entities during the bear market, they got to figure out how they can earn. Mara still believes in Bitcoin, in my opinion, significantly, but they're a business, right? So if they have an opportunity, they're going to take advantage of that. And they are also public, so they have a fiduciary duty for their shareholders, right? So the bullet points are: Mara Holdings sold over 15,000 Bitcoin for about 1.1 billion to buy back US $1 billion in convertible notes, right? The transaction reduces potential dilution from convertibles and alters the company's balance between Bitcoin holdings and debt. So they have to, answer to board, to their holders, and all this stuff. So they have to be responsible with, where they are. This move comes as Mara pivots more towards AI. So that's kind of more the significant part of this, is that like the pivot more towards AI. But again, they're a business. If they can create more revenue, then it's smart for them to do that certain times, right? And it says, as they pivot more towards AI infrastructure and data center expansion. And then it goes into their stock. It says Mara Holdings, recently trading at around $8.28, has seen mixed share performance, with a 5.1 gain over the last 30 days, a 40% decline over the last year, and 82.8% decline over 5 years. In that context, this large-scale debt reduction using Bitcoin proceeds marks a notable capital structure adjustment that investors may weigh alongside prior volatility in the share price. For readers following Mara's shift towards AI and data centers, this decision indicates a different approach to funding future projects. With less reliance on issuing equity through convertible debt, the rebalanced mix of debt and Bitcoin on balance sheet may influence how investors view the company's risk profile and flexibility as it carries out its AI and data center build out. So, AI is getting more and more involved with the Web3 space, right? So Bitcoin miners, it makes sense for them to use their GPU, their power, to be able to inference, right? So that is what's happening. Like I said, I think Mara is going to continually stay in Bitcoin and continually mine and all that stuff. They know where the price is headed in the future, but these are more responsible business decisions, I think, that they're making. All right. Let's get into the predictions markets and why everybody's getting super bullish on predictions markets, and how we can look at predictions markets and exposure to predictions markets, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to figure out where the opportunities are. But predictions markets top $20 billion in monthly volume as geopolitics drives majority of the activity. So I don't really like that. Because we're talking about how manipulation can get, I guess, folded into these predictions markets, and manipulation can happen. Nevertheless, the revenue is there, right? Or volume. And so there's huge institutions that are investing in Kalshi and Polymarket, potentially other prediction markets platforms, because this volume says this is not only like a Web3 crypto niche anymore. This is mainstream adoption is happening, right? And there's an article from the block that says the market for betting on future events has surpassed 20 billion in monthly trading volume for the first time. This is the first time it's a major, threshold event. Amid a surge of activity tied to geopolitical conflict with U.S. politics, monthly transaction volumes across prediction markets has grown from 1.2 billion in early 2025 to over 20 billion, with unique wallets more than tripling from 840,000 addresses in 6 months leading up to February 2026, according to a report from blockchain analytics from TRM Labs. Right, so 20 billion in revenue, and the volume is pretty significant in terms of its growth. I'm going to share this chart so you can see, it really picked up September 2025, and it's just been going up ever since, right? And I expect that to continue to, continue to go up. But and institutions are going to pour into it. And how do you get exposure, right? So I think we're pretty much waiting on, does Kalshi go public? I think they will, or there will be some sort of, that's how I think you're gonna be able to have exposure as a retail investor. Polymarket, that's the one I think that everybody's waiting on. Do they drop a token? They are making sure that from a regulation standpoint, they do everything correctly, but they have institutions on their side as well. So that's also going to be very interesting. But once those entities become available for exposure, I think, people are going to really take their time to assess, hey, does this belong in my portfolio? Because I imagine they're going to be pretty high market caps to start off with. But, if it's an industry that's just going to be like society, this is normal society, those market caps could get crazily huge, right? And you see institutions like ICE, not that institution, but the owner of the New York Stock Exchange, I guess the entity name is ICE. They invest an additional 600 million in Polymarket, right? So they're just pouring into Polymarket. So people are waiting. Polymarket, are you guys going to launch a token? Are you guys going to go public? What is the deal there? So that brings the total investment from just that entity at 1.64 billion in Polymarket, right? So we'll stay up to date on once, people can have exposure to those type of entities and businesses, because they're going to be around for a very, very long time. This is a new way of doing things. All right. I'm going to get into one more thing. Let me make sure that, and then we'll get into the Bitcoin ecosystem stuff here. I want to get into the important headlines here. So this is pretty important, but it's also kind of annoying because, and I'll tell you why I feel that way. The U.S., so this is Senate Banking Chair Tim Scott says crypto market structure legislation has bipartisan support. Okay, like we've known that, with industry alignment being the last remaining hurdle. Duh. I spoke last night with Coinbase, and basically it goes on to mention that he goes on, or he says he spoke last night with Coinbase and everyone is at the table. We've known that everyone is at the table, but Brian Armstrong and Coinbase came out yesterday and stated, hey, this supposed agreement that banks and the Web3 leaders are talking about, we're not for that, which makes a lot of sense because they're considered a distributor, right? You can earn yield from stablecoins on Coinbase's centralized exchange. So it doesn't come down to Congress. It doesn't come down to Congress. We got to just realize that, right? It comes down to, are the lobbyists happy? Are the lobbyists happy? And that's the world we live in. And I think we just got to accept that that's just how it goes. I mean, that's exactly what the statement is saying. It's like, we're there, we're ready to push it forward, but the industry alignment is the problem. Well, are they voting? You know what I mean? I guess they're voting with their money, and that's just how the world works, guys. That is how the world works. So, I just don't know if the banks are going to come to an agreement with Brian Armstrong, because obviously Coinbase and Brian Armstrong is the strongest opposition to what is the banks are suggesting here. I'm sure there is other opposition, but they don't want to necessarily be as vocal because maybe they're not as large and strong of an entity like Coinbase. Because I feel like Kraken is probably like, hey, let's just get this going. We have a Fed master account, that's my assumption and speculation, but that is what's happening with that. One other thing too, this is something to pay attention to if you are a large ETH holder. An Ethereum ICO participant who bought 38,800 ETH for just $12,000 back in 2014. Imagine buying $38,000 Ethereum or 38,800 units of Ethereum for just $12,000. That's crazy. And he just sold 11,552 worth of ETH at $23.42 million, right? So still has 20. I mean, this is not that significant. It's not going to really put that much of a dent into the market cap, right? 23 million. Bitmine is buying hundreds of millions of dollars of ETH. But is this going to be a trend? I think that's the biggest thing that you got to think about, right? Is this going to be a trend where some of these ICO participants say, hey, I'm in the bear market. We might not see a bull market for alts for a year and a half, 2 years. I'm going to sell down and then buy whenever it goes cheaper or something. So last update before we get to the Bitcoin stuff. Tether brings PwC and KPMG to strengthen audit readiness and credibility ahead of U.S. expansion. This is really significant for Tether. They've always had this dark spot on them in terms of auditing their collateral for USDT. So for them to come forward and say, hey, these are entities that are very reputable in the financial industry, right, for the U.S. in terms of auditing. We're bringing them on to audit our collateral so you guys can see, what we say is true. Now, Tether is a part of the industry, in my opinion, part of the corporate machine now, though. And so is Coinbase and all those big giants, because they're all like, they're doing this now, right? So maybe this is a friendly thing. I don't know. Again, speculation on my part. So, all right, let's get into the Bitcoin ecosystem update. Hopefully, I've still got some Bitcoin people in here. I know I haven't been talking about the Bitcoin I'm talking about the Bitcoin ecosystem people in here. I haven't been talking about the Bitcoin ecosystem because there hasn't been too many updates when it comes to infrastructure, other than the last significant one that was really significant was Magic Eden leaving, but things are starting to heat back up, right? And we'll kick it off with a new marketplace, okay? The new marketplace is called ord.net. And it was developed by Lifo FIFO, which is a community member in the Bitcoin ecosystem, a developer. He's well-known, founder of the Wizards of Ord. And he comes out and says, yesterday we soft launched Ord. It is about viewing ordinals through a fresh lens and laying foundations to build on top of it. And it's ord.net. He says, I have more to say about it in the incoming days, but for now, check it out. Connect your wallet, play around, and do not hold back on feedback. It goes into, say, Ord indexes every inscription, parent, and gallery. So galleries has been a big focus point. Every platform is saying, hey, you got to have a gallery now to make sure every asset within a collection is connected, right? This is how it should have been since the jump, but it is what it is. So now everybody's catching up with that. And it goes on to say the goal is to rely on on-chain data as much as possible, which is the Bitcoin way. I agree with that. And then the listing process becomes more of a verification process where we mark an existing parent or gallery as a verified collection, give it a URL, slug, and title, and enabling trading. Verification is currently handled through our public GitHub, and he listed the GitHub here. And then finishes on the post to say, there's plenty of tooling now for inscribing galleries. Take your time, do it right. Make sure the title and metadata are correct. It says, when OMB, when node monks, when we get good, complete galleries for them. There's no urgency. Ideally, those galleries come from the project founders, but they can also come from the community. What matters is that the data is good and reflects what Magic Eden or SetFlow had. So that is the latest market platform, and this is what the platform looks like. If it will load up here, hopefully it does, and I don't stay frozen here for too long. Okay, there we go. It's pulling up now. This looks almost identical to Magic Eden. Like the way that it worked before with these kind of slide show of the collections. And people will probably like that because they were, you know, you like what you're comfortable with, right? But that is, or .net, do your research on it, check it out yourself, and would be curious about your opinion on the platform. I know SatFlow is another platform to trade ordinals, as well as Ordinal Hive and Fonzie and his team. So they're all working hard to give you guys a good place to be able to trade Bitcoin ordinals, which I think is going to be the most collectible art, digital art in the future. I think it in my opinion, has the culture, has a community, and it will win long term for that. Unisat says they updated their gallery. So gallery is live on Unisat's platform. So everybody is adding the galleries. Okay. So that is another update. Now, this is kind of the funny update, I guess you could say, for the Bitcoin ecosystem. And it is the MaxiMadness Final Four thread. And this has been going on, I want to say, for this past week or so, maybe longer, honestly. But it was basically who wins the Bitcoin MaxiMadness, right? And it's a playoff of March Madness, of course. Let's actually see if this thread, how deep this thread goes. Maybe you can see the previous people that went up against each other. Oh, maybe not. Okay, but you see who's in the Final Four here. You have Adam Back. Okay, so he's obviously considered a Bitcoin maxi. He's been here since the beginning. Some people consider him a part of who Satoshi is, a group of 3 people, 2 people. And then you have, surprisingly, Casey Roederer, which is the founder of Bitcoin Ordinals. I say surprisingly because Bitcoin maxis hate Bitcoin Ordinals, and they're very anti-Bitcoin Ordinal community for the most part. But Casey Roederer got to the Final Four. And then I don't know who this is. This other person here is Yellow, is who he goes by. And you notice that Adam Back and Yellow have the blue laser eyes, right? And then you have Aaron Redwing, which is she works with Casey. So she represents Bitcoin Ordinals as well. And you have them both in the Final Four. And Casey beat Adam Back and Aaron beat Yellow. So now Casey and Aaron are going up against each other for the finals here. And, Casey created Bitcoin Ordinals, which was amazing, but he also created Bitcoin Runes, which is controversial a bit. You have some strong Bitcoin Runes communities like Dog Token and a couple others, right? But he mentioned that if he won this, if someone, him or Aaron, won this competition, that he would add turbo flag feature to the Bitcoin Runes protocol, right? And I'm going to try to play this so you guys can hear it, so you can kind of know what this actually is, because I had to hear it from him. Because at the end of the day, we know that Bitcoin Runes and fungible tokens on Bitcoin need to be optimized for better UX. But let's hear what he has to say in terms of what the turbo flag means and what it is for Bitcoin. So let's take a listen here.
What is turbo flag? Wait, that's actually a good question.
Yeah, what is
Casey, do you want to explain the turbo flag?
Yeah, sure. So the turbo flag, me and Raph were finishing up runes, and we had a bunch of crazy ideas for things to add to the runes protocol. Things like gambling, lottery functionality, stuff like that. However, we wanted to get this feature done because we wanted to defeat BRC20. So we were like, okay, we need to get runes out the door. And we knew that some of these features, this like lottery shit, whatever, would not be something that you could, that all runes would want. They might be disruptive, they might create runes out of nowhere. So we added this turbo flag, which is a way that runes could preemptively opt in to having these like crazy features, basically. However, the turbo flag doesn't do anything on its own. Things just say they have the turbo flag set. Like I think Dog has a turbo flag set.
I think a lot of them do. Why not, right? It's like, you know.
So I've been kind of mulling it over, and one of my campaign promises was that if either me or Aaron wins, which is now guaranteed, freakishly enough, I will add a feature for the turbo flag.
Which again, I want to stress to the voters who are undecided, Casey would not be doing this if I hadn't been so competitive and taken this fucking Twitter popularity contest.
Don't make me withdraw my endorsement, okay? You already won.
You're like, wait, if Aaron wins, no turbo flag.
Yeah.
So basically, right, that is going to happen now. And so we're going to figure out if it's going to affect the protocol in a way to excite people. But, you know, we'll see. You know, it definitely needs something because the way that these tokens move is like molasses right now. But we'll see. So gambling, those type of things, I don't know. But, hey, at least it's something new and different. And that is the latest update, but that's pretty cool. I feel like, you know, the people for the Bitcoin ecosystem definitely stepped up and picked, you know, these two to represent Bitcoin maximalists. And I guess this is a new Bitcoin maxi, right? And the old guard probably hates that. But it is what it is. You got to accept it if it is the truth. And it looks like it is. But that's going to wrap up today's show. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. You know, awesome Friday show. And obviously the price, some of you guys are probably not happy about, you know, the price of Bitcoin. I get it. It's at 65,800 now. So it is going down lower. So they sweep that liquidity I was talking about. That was definitely there. But again, I'm going to remind you guys, smash the likes wherever you are, especially on YouTube and X. But appreciate each and every one of you guys. Continually focus, pay attention to what's happening. I know it's boring and slow, but we just pay attention because whenever it's time for Bitcoin to come out of the bear market, we'll know. You know what I mean? We'll know together because we're waiting on the triggers, right? 50-day moving average, 100-day moving average, conquered both of those. Hey, we're heading out. Might be Q4 of this year, something like that. But we'll get that confirmation together. So appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thought y'all couldn't do the show. I hope you guys have a blessed weekend to, you know, just go do something fun. Take your mind off of, if you're stressed out about this, go do something fun. Stay blessed, and I will see you guys on Monday. Peace.